All right, we got Brian Hoyer in the queue, so we're going to bring in our resident quarterback after a quick word from FanDuel. Guys, the wild card round is still here. We got another game tonight, Texans versus Steelers, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode from now until the Super Bowl. Every game day during the playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Just make your picks like normal, then apply your profit boost to get an even bigger payout while the playoffs are rolling. Just visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every single NFL playoff game day. And with that, we are thrilled to welcome Brian Hoyer back to the show. Big win in New England last night. Brian, how you doing today, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Hey, how about that game last night?
Yeah, incredible. I appreciate that Travion Henderson jersey right there, Jay. He's been a huge part of this team, and the 1-2 punch between him and Ramondre, I mean, it's been incredible, and I think he's only going to continue to contribute more and more because I think he'll get involved in the pass game as well. So, and I love that rivalry jersey as well.
It is sweet. Yeah, Brian, I saw them wear this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, I got to have that.
Hey, Brian, it's very interesting that after Vrabel, kind of had him in the doghouse a little bit, it actually seems that his blitz pickup is getting better. Like funny how that works. I said, that's a nice cut block right there, Travion.
Yeah,
it's the small things.
Yeah, no, he's a. I mean, when they drafted him, I was so excited just from seeing him at Ohio State and knowing how Josh McDaniels was going to use him. And look, it's a jump to the NFL. I don't care what position you are, and it's not just the running of the football; it's all encompassing. And Josh asked those backs to do more than any coordinator that I know as far as blitz pickup. You got separate rules, and it takes a while, but he's there now, and he's a big contributor to what they've done this year.
Brian, of the other four games, all the other four games were great. They were contested to the very end. What stood out for the rest of the postseason so far for you?
I mean, to me, it's just playoff football. It's all coming down, and the margin of error just shrinks, right? I think that's the biggest thing you see, and having been in those games, and you realize, in the regular season, there's always another week, right? There's another week to get things right. When it gets to this point of the year, those little mistakes, like I'm watching that 49ers-Eagles game, and the 49ers can't get lined up. Now, they lose Kittle, so I'm sure the game plan's having to evolve, and the receivers don't know who they are, who's on the ball, who's not, and they have to burn a timeout. And luckily, the Eagles fell short because that would have really been the difference in the game when you look at just how sloppy it was. And to me, it's like those mistakes in the postseason just get so magnified, and every game is going to come down pretty much to the fourth quarter, the second half for sure, if not the fourth quarter. So even I was at that Patriots game last night, and when they scored to go up, 17-3 or whatever it was, a touchdown pass to Hunter Henry, you're like, all right, it's good, but then it's the playoffs. You just don't know. Everything's so tight, and they had to hold on, and their defense played phenomenal job. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but Milton Williams basically headbutted Vrabel right in the lip.
Great.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That's the most Mike Vrabel thing ever, by the way.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Vrabel wants to be in the mix as much as he can. So, but his players love him. I think I know I've been sitting here listening to you guys talk about head coaching search and stuff, and Vrabel, I think. Obviously it helps to have Drake May, it helps to have Josh McDaniels, but I think he's found a balance of being that modern day coach and how to, be hard on his guys, but also love them up. And you can see the way that these guys respond. They love him. They absolutely love him. And that has earned him the right to be tough on him, because I think they all realize not only is it being productive, but he wants the best for him, and he understands it. And the thing that I love that he sees, he just keeps talking about, it's all about you guys. It's all about the players. I want you to enjoy this. I think that perspective of being a successful player has allowed him to have that type of mentality now his second go-around as a head coach.
Yeah, he's got 3 rings as a player. He knows that he knows it is about the players, and I think he's the perfect blend of what you mentioned. We've been talking all morning about the Browns search and reports that may or may not be true that Harbaugh might have interest, and if he does, maybe he's going to want $20 million and $10 million for his assistants, and a lot of stuff that we don't know what's true and what isn't. What is your overall view of the Browns' head coaching search, where they've gone so far? Where should this trail end?
Yeah, well, I mean, according to at least NFL Network, what I'm reading, it doesn't seem like they're hiring guys that are going to be what we talked about last time I was with you, like this alpha dog, and I don't know who's out there. I mentioned Brian Flores, saw a lot of kickback on that. But to me, like, okay, Mike McDaniel, Tommy Rees, Jim Schwartz, Shieldhouse, Monken, like there's not one of these guys that to me is going to come in and like be the man. Like, what about thinking outside the box and going and thinking about Signetti, like at Indiana, but I don't know if the ownership wants someone like that who's going to be in charge and say, look. So that's why to me, like the John Harbaugh thing, like are the Haslams and Andrew Berry going to be like, come on, John, and you run the program and we're going to stay out of it? I just don't think that that's the type of ownership that they are.
Yeah, they've proven they can't do that.
You mentioned McDaniel. You were with him here. Just what are your thoughts on him, your time with him, and then him as the head coaching candidate here?
Yeah, I think, Mike's a great coach. He knows the X's and O's, just as good as anybody, especially in that West Coast system. I find it odd because I was just seeing in Michael Silver, I think, tweeted it out, like in his book, he was the one who helped Kyle put together the PowerPoint to get him out of Cleveland. And so I find that very odd that, now they're like, all right, come back in, Mike. And I love Mike. I think he's a very great when it comes to X's and O's. I just don't know, for that environment, I would rather have a Jim Schwartz, a guy who understands the culture there, who's been a head coach, who led your defense to be one of the top defenses in the league, who knows the guys. Like, if you're going to go with someone who's been there, I would even look at a Jeff Hafley. Hafley was there when I was there. He's been a tremendous coach. He's had that Packers defense playing really well. Obviously, they took a huge blow when they lost when they had Micah Parsons go down, but I think he is a primed guy to be a head coaching candidate. I look at him, a guy like him. I find it very odd that Mike McDaniel was the one who helped Kyle get out of Cleveland, and now they're bringing him in to interview for the head coaching job.
Hey Brian, we were talking earlier about like G and Jay were saying you want coaches to be adaptable to the talent around you. Ideally, of course, that's true, but it feels like we're in an era where guys get labeled off of whatever tree they come from, and that's the system that they run. So if you are a Shanahan guy, you run or Kubiak guy, McVay guy, like you have the trees, and then that's who you're getting. So do guys really still build systems around talent, or is it the coach comes with the system already in place?
The coach has to come with the system. I don't think that they can create a new system when they get there, and guys can plug into that system in different ways, and the best coaches can adapt that system to certain players. And so, look, I thought what Kyle Shanahan did last night was a masterclass. I mean, they're already down, and I don't know if you guys saw this, like this electromagnetic pulse that got like this substation out there with all these injuries. I'm starting to believe that with all the injuries that they're having. It's crazy. But what he's been able to do with a patchwork team, and thankfully the one guy that has stayed healthy is McCaffrey, and he came up huge for them last night. But you can adapt your system. And so to me, when I think of a Kyle Shanahan system, I think of run, outside zone, play action, boots. Well, they don't have the players to really do that right now. So what are they doing more of? Drop back pass. And that's his trust in Brock Purdy. And Purdy, almost threw it away last night, but he stuck with them, and he's had to adapt his team. So, but ultimately you only know what you know. And if you've only been in that system, you're going to bring it. And then eventually it's got to adapt and evolve to the players that are on your team, not the team that you just came from. So, I think a coach brings a system, and then he adapts that system to the guys that he has.
Brian, I have a question. It's kind of off topic, but when I watched it, I said, I can't wait to talk to other NFL quarterbacks and see what their knowledge is on this. During that game, Tom Brady did a booth demonstration about the differences between holding the football when you're throwing in a high wind situation.
Yeah.
And I just looked at that and I'm like, my God, that seems like Brady being Brady. Is that commonly known? I'm sure obviously there's a different grip, but the way he explained it, the front edge of the football and whether you're pointing it up or down, I just thought, my God, that's one of the little minutia things that make good great and great GOAT. What did you make of that demonstration? And is that common that all guys know and do that?
I think for me, I was so fortunate. First 4 years of my career was in the building, in that room with him every single day. And there was no detail that was too small for Tom. And the way he described it, that's how we always wanted to throw. So he talked about the U as opposed to the C. And I'm trying to teach my son now how to throw. The problem is, and a lot of guys can throw this way, but when you get into those environments, the nose stays up, and now the wind really changes the trajectory of the ball. If you can get on top of the ball, it actually allows you to rip it. Like, I remember when I was playing here early in my career, Mark Sanchez had just come in the league, and Tom was like, I just don't know how it's going to work out for that guy. He really sets the ball on a tray, he throws it with the U as opposed to the C. And I never had thought about it in that way. But after I saw it, I was like, he's right. And so I started to change the way I threw the football. And I just think really like it'd be the off season, and it would be, OTA 5, and he'd have Tom House come out, and after practice, we'd practice for 2 hours, and we'd go throw for another hour with Tom House, and he'd be like, I got to change this stride. I'm like, it's about a 9 to 10 inch stride right now. I got to get down to 6-inch strides. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy is a psychopath. He's the greatest quarterback of all time, and like the best thrower of the football all time. And here he is trying to get like a 4-inch difference in his stride. And it really, for me, was so beneficial to see that. And mechanically speaking, I would say throwing has changed from the time that I was at St. Ignatius High School with Nick Restifo, God rest his soul, and teaching me how to throw a football to what it is now. It's very different. And being around Tom and how calculated he was with everything, which is, I think he's doing a tremendous job in the booth, especially when he gets the opportunity in those little breaks to demonstrate that, because it just goes to show at what level of obsession he had of being as great as he could be. I mean,
and what it takes to be great. It's not an accident.
Yeah, exactly. No, Brian, it's not. Trust me, it's not an accident.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm curious, a couple of things on Caleb Williams, because we're all so quick to determine, myself included in the media, who's good and who's not. And Caleb Williams was not great as a rookie. He's been great, especially the second half of this year. Is better and better. That comeback was unbelievable. That one throw, that crazy throw he made, I mean, like, that seems to me as hard a throw as you can possibly have to make, is it?
Oh, there's not many guys who can make that throw. I mean, that's like the Mahomes level throw. That's those guys who are able. And I always thought Caleb coming in was a version of Pat, and it was just a matter of how can they refine it, how can they coach it. And this is where you talk about coaching and what it can do for players. You talk about what Ben Johnson can go in there and do in 1 year. And I would say early in the year, Caleb was improving, but it was still like, I don't know if it's going to get there. And now it's been these clutch moments. Go back to the Packers game in the regular season, and when they need him the most, he shows up. And it happened again in this game. It wasn't perfect, but you talk about that throw, the level of difficulty and just the belief in your own mind to make that throw is incredible. But I look at Caleb, I look at Drake May. You get two of the best offensive minds around these young, talented quarterbacks, and it really allows them to grow. And I would say, on top of that, Chicago in the offseason pretty much did everything they could to surround Caleb with protection up front. They trade for Tooney. They get Dahlman in free agency. Jackson they trade for. They draft Loveland. They draft Burden. They basically tried to put as many good players around him as they could. And then you take that with the coaching that he gets from Ben Johnson. And then when it comes down to it, you let his natural skills take over when it's not in the rhythm of the play. And he's come up clutch. I mean, there's no denying his clutch moments this year. They've kind of been the cardiac bearers all season long.
Yeah.
Brian, Tom Brady said something earlier this year. He talked about specifically how nowadays with young quarterbacks, the expectation on young quarterbacks is at an all-time high. Like, we want dudes to be good in 4 days. He also talked about there's sometimes we rank quarterbacks, but we don't fail to rank their quarterback coach or their offensive coordinator or the guys that are in the room with them all the time. And so when you look at these teams this weekend, you look at the teams who had great quarterbacks and great coaches, they all seem to win these football games. I guess a segue into that is, if you got young quarterbacks and there's Shedeur Sanders on the roster, there's still Deshaun Watson still on the roster, Dylan Gabriel on the roster, still young guys. Can a great offensive mind work with some guys who have had a small sample size and get them to play at a level where you see Bryce Young playing pretty well after we thought he was terrible, or some of these other quarterbacks Drake May? So is that a possibility that a guy can come in and get something out of someone, especially if he's only played 7 games?
Yeah, no, I think look, that's 100% true, and I think for me, 15 years, 9 different organizations, you would be shocked at the level of incompetency and some of the coaching that goes around, and some of the and for me, I had the perspective coming from New England, which I just talked about being with Tom Brady and the way Bill Belichick would run team meetings and the way Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien would run an offense, and I would go other places and I'd be like, that's it. That's the plan. That's all. Like it's a 2-minute team meeting. Bill Belichick's talking for another 57 minutes in his team meeting. And so, the level. I don't think people truly understand the level of discrepancy from the way that the best teams do it and some of the mediocre or even the poor teams do it. And I think your point is, if you bring the right person in, now it's a two-way street. You have to be able to be coachable. You have to be able to absorb the information, work at it, acknowledge where you have a deficit and get better. But it's definitely, if you have the right guy, it can make the world a difference. But I do think at a certain point, those coaches, they don't cross that white line. So the player has to go out and be able to execute everything that's taught to them, everything that's drilled with them in practice. That's why there's certain teams that are moving on and there's teams that aren't. And like you said, there's no better way to win in the NFL than to have great coaching and great quarterback play.
It's funny because in the last 3 years, I guess you have 3, we've seen situations in Cleveland where Kevin Stefanski takes a team to the playoffs with 5 quarterbacks, some of whom probably should have been selling insurance, not slinging pigskins in the NFL. And he was praised. He was recognized as Coach of the Year. He took the team to the playoffs. It's almost impossible to believe that just 2 years later, he lost all of that knowledge and suddenly can't coach anymore. And he's the guy that gets shown the door. Have you seen situations before in the NFL where teams get it wrong on the coach or the quarterback, and then they go other places and have success? Or it's hard to figure out what's what anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Andy Reid would be a pretty good example of that, right? In Philly, and he's got McNabb, and they just can't get over the hump, and so they let him go, and he goes to Kansas City and totally kind of reinvents himself, and then Patrick Mahomes comes along, and it's a match made in heaven. I really believe it's all about timing and circumstance and who's doing what and who's playing that position and how are you coaching them. I mean, I would say Vrabel's a pretty good, probably more recent example. He's in Tennessee. I don't think Mike probably changed much of his X's and O's or his philosophies. It's just a matter of a little bit of perspective. He talked about, being in Cleveland and being able to really understand, he's not doing the day-to-day grind. He was able to kind of sit back and see the type of young player that's in the league. How is he going to foster an environment for them? And now he gets a second opportunity. And like I said, he gets Drake May, which I'm sure is a big reason he wanted that job. He has Josh McDaniels, who can basically be the offensive head coach, not just the coordinator, the guy who basically handles all of that. And he's able to focus and be more of that CEO type. I think ultimately, if you're looking for a head coach, yeah, it's great to be, the young guru play caller, but there's a lot on a head coach's plate. And if you can find someone who has the experience, can be the leader of the team, can be the CEO and delegate to the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and really be involved in the camaraderie, the culture, all of those things, I think that's probably the best way you can go about it.
Brian, we had about a civil war over the weekend in the NFL on points or go for it. Take the points or go for it.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Which side are you on?
Yeah, the Civil War.
I mean, look, I think the one thing is we've not everybody, but it's this certain like heavy lean to analytics. And I even tweeted out about this. I'm like, analytics are great, and for certain things, I think they're awesome. But I don't always take into account the human element, right? The momentum or the matchup or the weather or all of these things that are. And I think Bill Belichick was kind of. He took them into account, but he always kind of went with his gut feeling. And one of the stories I love about Bill was in that Seattle Super Bowl right before Malcolm Butler picked off that pass. The analytics would have said, like, take a timeout, save yourself some time. But he's like, I looked across the sideline. I could just see they were in a bit of a disarray. I didn't like the way that they were kind of not sure what they were going to do, and I wanted to let them kind of play it out. And sure enough, it turns into this game-winning interception. And And who knows? I mean, analytics, maybe they take the time out and the same result, but you just don't know. I think in baseball and in basketball and certain sports where there's more one-on-one matchups, I think that you can take those more into account. But football is the ultimate team game. And so if you're saying it says go for it on fourth and whatever, but now you're playing the Seattle Seahawks defense, it's different than playing I don't know who's a bad defense this year, like the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, like there's different factors there that are really minute to minute, situation to situation. Is the wind blowing in your face? Is it's your back? Like I think all of those things have to be taken into account. And so, the now is like, well, you got them backed up anyways if you go for it and you don't get it instead of just taking the points. And I have a feeling at some point it'll really come back to bite someone in that scenario.
It has. And even the game situation, if it's 6-3 in the third quarter, and you could use those 3 points, whether you're on the 6 side or the 3 side.
I'm sure both things have come back to bite people too.
I'm sure they have too.
The morale of what it does to the morale of the team. Sure, if you get it, it boosts the morale.
The momentum.
If you don't, I remember thinking back in the 2018 season, that Super Bowl, so that had been in 2019. And this is, this is mic'd up and we're at the end of the game. It's fourth and whatever. We're like on the 30-something yard line and Tom comes over the sideline and Bill's thinking about going for it. And Tom's like, we got a great kicker. Kick it. The game's over. There's no way. It turns into a 10-point lead with whatever time is left. And he could see him thinking about it. He's like, all right, yeah, kick it. And Steve Gostkowski nails the kick. And it was like one of those things, like we just won the Super Bowl. It wasn't the walk-off moment, but we knew in our minds and the way that let the defense go out there and play, like those all go into account of and I don't think, some computer that's generating what the statistics are can always analyze all that.
There's too many variables that when you use a subset of a season to dictate a go or no in a win or go home situation, there are too many variables that are not being taken into account to use a subset of numbers. I loved your point. If you're going against Seattle defense, it's much different than if you're going against a bad defense. And part of the number that figures 4th and 3's a go and not a no is that you were doing it against the average
NFL
defense.
Do you really think coaches are just doing that without thinking about those things? I don't know.
I think the smart ones
I think there's someone upstairs. And I've heard this from multiple. I've been on teams where it's happened. I've heard on other teams the coach goes to whoever the analytics guy is. All right, it's 3rd and 15. What should we do here? Draw, pass, that to me is it's you can't rely on that on every situation. You got to have some kind of gut. Yeah, exactly.
Brian, a couple of quickies to end it here. Number one, even though fans there are excited about Tom Brady, can you please laugh at everybody in Boston because they lost Alex Bregman?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a big deal up here, right?
I know they're pissed.
And the NL or the AL East, they haven't spent any money in free agency.
None.
Everybody else going wild. It's an interesting time, and they made a run at it last year, and you're thinking they're going to load up on some more guys, but they do have some young talent. But I think they would have loved to keep Bregman.
Are you a big Guardians fan?
I look Guardians. My son, because he likes baseball, I take him to the Red Sox game. There's not a better place to go. You walk in and you're in the dark tunnel.
Awesome.
It's kind of like the old Cleveland Stadium, and then you walk out and it's like walking back in time. So I love going to Fenway, but I always keep up with the Guardians and Cleveland sports in general. Yeah.
And finally, I need to know what's going on here. So Progressive has this campaign where they use backup quarterbacks, like longtime backup quarterbacks in the commercial.
Yeah.
There's 8 guys that they use in these commercials. 4 of them played for the Browns. And then you got Mitch Trubisky, who's from Northeast Ohio. You played for the Browns. You're from Northeast Ohio. You got a great personality. How are you not in these commercials? What is happening? Have they called you?
I think they're all current players, aren't they?
Not all of them, but funny story enough, that concept was kind of brought to me in 2019, 2020. Yeah. And then COVID happened and I never heard back from him. And then I'm sitting there one day and I'm really close friends with Jacoby Brissett, and his commercial comes on. I'm like, that was supposed to be my commercial.
Case Keenum.
I'm gonna keep.
Isn't Case Keenum retired?
No, he's still playing.
Yeah, he's still playing.
Yeah,
Bridgewater's still playing.
I think they're all current.
It's Tommy DeVito, Terry Bridgewater, Tyler Huntley, Trubisky, Dobbs, Brissett, Keenum, and Colt McCoy. No, he's retired.
No, there's another one in there too.
Is
Snoop
McCown
is
in there maybe?
Huntley, I mentioned
Huntley.
him. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear you
Yeah.
say Huntley. They're all playing.
No. Colt McCoy's
Yeah, so-
retired.
Was
We'll
Colt
work
in one
on
of
it.
those?
I gotta get back to
missed
my
that.
representation
Let's
because this
go.
was literally brought to me back in like maybe late 2019, early 2020.
Yeah.
I was like, I would love to do that. It's a great idea, and
Oh, they're funny.
It kind of got shelved because of COVID. And then I'm sitting there one day, and Jacoby comes on. I
Yeah.
text him. I said, "Dude, that was supposed to be me. Those were
Yeah.
that was the commercials they were pitching to me back in 2019." So if
This
you
is
guys know
bogus. You
someone
got to
over at Progressive,
get your agent on this, Brian.
Yeah,
we
you
need
need
you
to
in
do
these
that.
commercials.
I
If
know.
Colt is
Crazy.
truly
For
in
sure.
one. I
Yeah,
don't remember
I hadn't
Colt.
seen him, but on the list that I looked up,
I haven't
it
seen
had
Colt
him.
McCoy. Maybe they pulled it because he's not playing anymore.
I don't know.
Have you guys seen
Yeah,
Taken?
no, they're great. It's what a great
Yes.
concept of
Yeah,
commercial.
it
I love
really is.
the Teddy Bridgewater backup listener, and he just sits there.
Oh, that was
like
awesome.
this and he's listening.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that is good.
Brian,
and
I'll-
Huntley's good too.
Yeah.
Dan's
Thanks,
trying to
Brian.
explain
I'll
life.
put the wheels in motion, Brian. I
Yeah, let's go. We got to get
Appreciate
Brian
that.
in these commercials. This is
Thank
insane.
you so much.